morning to you all, our lovely viewers, and welcome to yet another thrilling edition of Acfim Talks. This is a weekly talk show brought to you by Alliance for Finance Monitoring, Acfim. My name is Elizabeth Karunji, and I'll be your host for today. So before we get started, if you haven't subscribed yet to Acfim's YouTube channel, kindly click the subscribe button below, and you can also share the link with your friends to tune into the show. Also follow us on all our social media platforms, that is on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. The details are all on your screen below. So today on Acfim Talks, we're going to be taking a recap on the recent by-elections and their implications on Uganda's democratic dispensation. But before we begin, I want to give you a brief context. The Uganda Electoral Commission has so far conducted 5 by-elections for members of parliament in the constituencies of Omoro County, Soroti East, Bogonyo, Bukimbiri County, and Busongora South, and for one of the district chairpersons, that is in Kayunga. Some of these elections were annulled by court due to the electoral integrity deficits that did not meet the accepted standards of being free, fair, and transparent. Elections are a cornerstone of democracy, and they empower people to participate in the voting of their political representatives. Protecting and promoting the integrity of elections is therefore a top policy priority. In all these by-elections that we have seen so far, there were some electoral integrity deficits that were observed. For instance, we have seen videos circulating on social media and pictures which are being shared on mainstream news of plainclothes men arresting polling agents, political leaders of mainly opposition parties as well. We have also seen excessive use of money, abuse of state resources, damage of election materials, and allegations of ballot stuffing, among others. And this episode of Acfim Talks particularly looks into the by-elections that have been conducted so far and what implication they have on Uganda's democratic dispensation. To have this conversation with me, I have Eseru Abel. Abel is a political scientist, and I'm so excited to have you on the show, Abel.
Thank you, Lisa, and good morning to all our viewers outside there.
Right. We also have Eddie Kainda. Mr. Kainda is an economist and a political analyst. I'm not sure he's logged in yet, but Eddie, would you love to say hello to the viewers if he's in? He's probably not in yet, but will be joining us shortly. So Abel, let's kickstart this conversation. And I want you to tell our viewers, from your point of view as a pro-democracy actor, how would you sum up the recently conducted by-elections?
Thank you, Lisa, for that question. First of all, I would like to inform our viewers that elections can further democracy, development, human rights, and security, or undermine them. For this reason, promoting and protecting the integrity of elections is a very critical and important issue. Only when elections are credible can they legitimize a government in power, or even the leader can be looked at someone who was elected in a credible manner, as well as effectively safeguard the rights of the citizens to express their political rights. Back to your question on how I should sum up these by-elections. First of all, you brought them very well when you're giving us the preamble. There were still some electoral integrity deficit that we observed. Personally, I've been moving around the country observing some of these by-elections. Of course, we know that some of the by-elections were null due to electoral integrity deficits because some of the candidates and also political parties and also our EMB did not conduct themselves very well. So they made sure that elections did not go in a free and credible manner as expected, as democracy supposes. But when we go back to these by-elections, we have still seen some of the deficits which have continued to undermine Uganda's democracy for so long. For example, we are talking about the issue of abuse of state resources. When you look at state resources, you talk about financial, personnel, and vehicles, among others. And in all these by-elections, they can tell you that there are very many top government officials who have been moving around. And if you ask yourself, what have they been using and who has been guarding them in terms of personnel, you'll find that the security personnel are paid by taxpayers' money. The vehicles they are using are government vehicles, and some of them conceal the vehicles by removing the number plates. We have seen all those pictures around, but also they have come up with a new form of smearing the number plates with some oily thing and putting some mud, so you cannot be able to recognize which vehicle is this, which state institution does it belong to. So, but there's also an issue of excessive use of money. Money has become a permanent fixture in our elections in Uganda, and it's high time we need to start having a conversation on how can we regulate how much money should be spent and how much money should be injected in elections, and on what items should the money be spent. So I think it's high time we start coming up with a campaign finance regulation that can aid in regulating the money that's in elections. But there's also the issue of security. We have seen in these by-elections, there has been over deployment of security in some areas, particularly I can speak about Usongora South, and then also we talk about Soroti East. So you find that the involvement of security in the elections has caused a lot of voter apathy, and some of the voters even failed to turn out. So, but I can generally say the campaign period of most of these elections was peacefully done, except that most of the electoral integrity deficits would surface on the eve to the polling day. That's why we would see cases of arrests of polling agents, arrests of political leaders, and also arrests of some of the voters and some other things. And in one of the stakeholders meeting we had with the Electoral Commission that was in Buchimbiri, the chairperson himself, the chairperson of the commission, Electoral Commission, that's Uganda Electoral Commission, came out and said, of course, security is part and a key actor in the electoral process, but there are some complaints they are receiving as a commission from the voters and also the political players, the candidates and political parties, that security is now arresting people without even asking them or doing further investigation to find out whether these people are engaged in acts that do interfere with electoral processes, or even they have been caught on the act of maybe giving out money and what. Because on one occasion, one of the police officers who came out to defend the forces said, for example, when they arrested someone in Sorot, they said they were told that someone had been in a room and was sleeping with about 2 million exchange money which was a bundle in bundles of 2,000, and it was suspected that that money would be used for voter bribery. So I asked myself, okay, if I am maybe one of the party leaders, or I belong to a political party, and maybe I'm supposed to pay my polling agents on polling, they maybe give them money for food or buy food items and water, and also pay them. What audacity does the police or any other security agency have to come to my room and arrest me on allegation that I have money in my room, 2 million in my room, and they have gotten information that I'm going to use that money to bribe voters? So I think also the security forces need to, who engage on polling, they need to see how they can work together with the Electoral Commission and other political players to ensure that they don't interfere with how the elections are organized, but they should play a role of making sure that everything moves on smoothly, so that we can be able to have a free and fair election. That's how I can sum up. But I can say that most of the elections went on well, regardless of some of those deficits that we saw. At least if you compare what happened now and what happened in 2021, you would see that, of course, there was less violence, although there were some arrests. So far, we have not registered any killing as registered in the November 18th, 2020. So I can commend the EC and also other actors who have been playing a great role in this by-election. But regardless of that, we are still having some deficits that we need to work out. So I think stakeholders that are engaged in elections need to discuss and come up with a good common position on how we can solve and grow our democracy, which is still nascent.
Yes, Abel. Thank you so much for that submission. I see Eddie trying to log in. Eddie, can you hear me? As Eddie is logging in, Abel, you made a brief comparison to these by-elections and the 2021 elections. If you compare both scenarios as an observer that has seen both the elections, do you think the scenarios are similar, or are there certain elements that we were not able to see as a country in the 2021 elections because social media was off? For instance, you talked about the cars that the number plates that are smeared and these guys that you can't really see them, and we've seen videos of ballot stuffing, which we're not able to see in last year's elections because social media was off for more than a week. So do you think that kind of blurred us? What do you think?
You see, these by-elections were very unique in the case that social media was first of all on. So whatever would happen, people would be able to take pictures, and that's why you were able to see most of those vehicles were moving on polling day. So anything that would happen, people would take videos and share. And they would also take pictures on whether policemen are trying to break into the houses of the political leaders. For instance, we saw a video clip from Soroti East where the allegations that the security officers were breaking into the home of the Soroti district woman named, that is Honorable Anne Adeke, and that was also shared on social media. So there are certain things that happen in this election that did not really happen in the 2021 by-election, because clips were able to be taken and people saw them, or as they happened. On the issues of, we saw also candidates. Of course, there are some candidates that were overzealous enough. They had after hearing the allegations of ballot stuffing, they went ahead and kicked and destroyed polling materials. That was so unfortunate. They just needed to have an engagement with the electoral officers or polling officials in those polling stations and see how they can be able to sort that out. But also, when you compare the previous election in terms of observation and very few civil society organizations were accredited to observe elections. And also, you find that I can talk about, as you also know, there were killings in the 2021 general elections. We saw the 18th and 19th November 2020 during the campaigns in Kampala. Over 54 Ugandans were shot at by stray bullets. So I've not seen that so far in any of these by-elections. Security is trying to also make sure that they manage the electoral process very well. But also, I think the candidates are not so violent, and also the voters are not acting in a so more violent manner as they used to act during the 2021 general campaigns, because they would provoke the security members, and out of those provocations, we find exchanges. So sometimes security members get angered, and through maybe trying to defend themselves, shoot out, you see tear gas, and also tear gas has been so rare in these by-elections as compared to what we saw in the 2021 general election. So I think we are trying to improve on certain aspects, which I believe we need to continue like that, regardless of some of the deficits that we have seen so far.
Thank you, Abel, for that. And that leads me to my next question. Oh, Eddie, we seem to have you on. Good to see you.
Yes, Lisa, good morning.
Yes, good morning. And I'm going to bombard you right away. And I would love to hear from you just a summation of the recently conducted by-elections from your point of view as someone who has been observing these elections.
Thank you, Lisa, for this invitation. I have been keen on observing the elections we have had. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Eddie, loud and clear.
I seem to be having a very bad network.
Eddie seems to be struggling with his connection, but Abel will join in from there. So Abel, you observed these by-elections, and there were allegations that money was dished out to most households, and police didn't even arrest the opposite, and and rather the police even arrested opposition members in Sorority City due to this allegation of vote bribery. What do you think needs to be done to solve this problem, this illegitimate use of money in elections?
As I earlier mentioned, money has become a permanent fixture in our elections, and one of the things they use to control voter consent nowadays is money. They induce them with money, and also sometimes candidates use money to buy certain small uh, food groceries and give to these voters. And I cannot rule out the fact that these allegations are true. In fact, there are some of the voters we talked to in some of these constituencies we went to, and they were telling us, of course, candidates, both opposition and also the ruling government, would give them money. They would go sometimes to, they have meetings, and they coin it in terms of they are giving you either money for water or something like a transport back home. So, but if you look at the amount of money being given to someone, you ask yourself, why should you give someone about 50,000 or 30,000 a transport refund? Yet someone comes from within that very constituency and it's not very far. So you really look at that. They are trying to induce them and bribe them and make sure that they vote for those candidates who have spent money on them. So the issue of voter bribery, vote buying, and commercialization of politics is a very big problem which needs to be tackled both from the government side, civil society, and also other stakeholders. First of all, I would like to suggest that there is need to be robust civic engagement with most of the electorates and also the political parties and also political candidates. We need to tell the candidates to appreciate that politics or elections is not about money, but it's all about you sharing the ideas you have with the electorates and let the electorates appreciate the ideas you have. Of course, there have been challenges on ground whereby uh, politicians are saying that voters demand a lot from them. And each time, even they go and campaign and tell them that this is what I promised to do for you in terms of maybe laying down their manifestos and their ideas before they leave the campaign ground or the area where they're having a meeting from. They will ask, how have you left us? How are you leaving us? Are you just leaving us like that? So there is a supply side. So we need to make sure, how do we cut off that from the supply side, but also from a demand side? The suppliers are politicians, the demanders are the voters. So how do we make a balance, try to come up with a balancing and ensure that we stop both the supply and demand? We can only ensure that by ensuring that we improve the service delivery, because most of these people who ask for that money are very impoverished. So they look at election seasons as an opportunity where they can recoup and make money from. So we need to make sure that our leaders and all those in government and politicians make sure that they extend the services these voters need, and also make sure that they come up with programs that can help in transforming the communities economically so that people can be able to rely on the income they have instead of waiting for politicians and they start demanding for money. But also, government needs to come up with a comprehensive campaign finance law, which can help in regulating how much money can be spent on elections, where does this money come from, and on what items can this money be spent on, and which body should be in charge of ensuring that there are regulations, the enforcement is done very well, and also political leaders comply, and if they don't comply, what sanctions can be done. So all these are some of the things that can be used to ensure that we address the issue of excessive spending and voter bribery in elections.
All right, thank you, Abel. And initially, in the beginning, it hinted on security, the role we have seen security agencies play in this election. And we know that their role is very vital in any election, but there have been numerous accusations of security being partisan, and over deployment of security tends to cause voter apathy, resulting into low voter turnout on polling day. What's the say on this, and what can be done about this?
Thank you, Lisa. Of course, as you have mentioned, security is a very key stakeholder in elections because they need to be there to ensure that the lives and properties of people are safeguarded. They make sure that violence does not occur and people decide, start to maybe batter and kill themselves. So we need security to be around elections, but their degree of involvement should also not extend to ensure that they start acting in a partisan way whereby they are seen maybe because there are accusations now that some security officials have been engaged in ballot stuffing, not issue of security officials arresting only opposition candidates and leaders. So we need to find a way of addressing the issue of security in our election. But also, there's an issue of over deployment. This, for the fact, we are over deploying security in most of these elections. And when I talk of security, we can also talk of the heads of district security. That is the we can talk about the resident district commissioners. All over the districts we have gone to monitor this by-election, they will tell you not less than 10 RDCs are camped in a constituency which has about, for example, when you talk about Busongora South, it has 11 sub-counties. So you have over 10 RDCs camped there, and they are being driven. They have guards, security guards. So what are they all doing in a small constituency? Whatever something else happens in their district when they are not there. So over deployment and of security members also has also resulted to voter apathy because some people are not used to seeing a lot of security around there. For example, this rural constituency, when you over deploy and there are very many people, they will start fearing and they will say, I think tomorrow I'm not going to vote, I rather remain in my house. For example, if I give you the voter turnout in most of these by-elections, you realize that some people did not vote because of fear of going of the security. For example, in Busongora itself, we had about 52,000 registered voters, but only about 27,000 turned out. That's about 52% of the registered voters. So where did the 48% go? If you were to ask yourself, maybe it's because of the over deployment that we saw that these people did not turn out. Even Soroti, we had about 36,000 registered voters, but only about 18,000 turned out. That's an estimate of it's about 51% voted. Where the rest, it's only in Buchimbiri where electoral commission scored high in terms of voter turnout. Out of the 32,000 registered voters, we had about 23,227, which is about 72%. So if we compare the deployment that was in Buchimbiri and Soroti City East and Busongora South, you realize that there was over deployment in Soroti City East and then Busongora South. Why? You know, these are some of the strongholds of opposition. Opposition has been dominating Soroti City East for so long, and also that area of Kasese, inclusive of Busongora. So you find that sometimes the government thinks that where opposition is so dominant, there is need of beefing up security to ensure that nothing like violence and ruckus happens. But this has another effect because when people see a lot of security in place, voters don't turn out to vote. And their figures, an electoral commission can also verify and ask themselves, we did not have heavy deployment in Buchimbiri South, and we had over 72% of the voters turning out to vote. We had heavy deployment in Busongora South and Soroti City East. We had less than 53% of voter turnout. So, do we need heavy deployment in our elections? I don't think we need all the RDCs we always deploy. And also, we saw some of the army officials involved, army officials in some of these by-elections. We ask ourselves, when did the army start coming to be part of the election?
Well, just a quick one. You're talking about the RDCs from within the region all camping in one constituency. Are they doing security work or are they doing NRM work? Because we have seen them canvassing for votes in some of the districts.
Of course, in some of the districts, and we have even seen some tweet. For example, I can tell you when I was in Omoro, they shared, I saw, and I also verified some tweets from the RDC of Omoro district, who was posting some of the things on this platform, on these social media pages, and I was asking myself, when did the government officials stand this partisan? Of course, there are some. I cannot confirm that all of them maybe go for elections to campaign for NRM, but what we are told that is that there are some of, because they are within that area or sub-region or that region, they go and help in terms of strategizing on how to ensure that the election moves in a free and transparent manner without violence. But of course, there's instances where we have seen some of them turn and start campaigning for other candidates. So it's so unfortunate sometimes that when we see them turn to campaign for other candidates, that means they forget what has taken them there. But for me, my point still remains that we don't need to over-deploy, and we don't need a lot of RDCs going to those districts to camp there in the name of security. Yet sometimes when voters see them, because each RDC has guards, has a driver. So if you have 10 RDCs moving around a small constituency, which has maybe 10 sub-counties, and you also have police, and on top of that, you have government officials that have come. You have the vice president, you have the prime minister, you have cabinet ministers, you have state ministers. All this come with personnel and security. So when they are all moving within a small constituency, what message do they pass across to the voters? Of course, voters will start getting scared. They will say, who are all these people and what are they all doing here? If I go maybe and they see me, won't I be arrested? So some of those things cause a lot of voter apathy. That's why I say we need to address how we deploy our security and what role. It should be very clear and stipulated clearly who should be involved in an election or a by-election. Should we have a lot of deployment? I don't think we need to have a lot of deployment. That's what I can say.
Thank you so much. We're about to go for a short break, but before we do that, we saw allegations of voters being ferried from different districts. I think in Sorority we had that some voters had been ferried in from Kumi. In Oyam, I think there were also voters ferried in from a neighboring district. As someone who observed these elections, is this true? Is this allegation true?
Of course, the issue of voter tourism is common in our elections in Uganda here, and for a fact that some candidates do ferry people to come and make numbers in their campaigns, but also some people do ferry voters. For example, if they realize that maybe I'm registered from Sorority City East and you have a bigger team in Kampala here who are supposed to vote, they can decide to organize and ferry us and we go and vote. But also, there are some people who ferry others. Of course, I've had those allegations, who ferry others to go and vote for those who are not going to vote. So I ask myself, how do they even vote if they are not registered from that area? So some of the people who the leaders and what were telling us, you see, for us in opposition, I don't know how true these allegations are. We need to discuss with the Electoral Commission and confirm whether this really happens, and also so that we can see how we can solve it. Because they were telling us, you see, when they want to give someone else to vote, they bring someone and tell you you're going to vote on behalf of this person, and when the polling agent of maybe some other candidate realize that this person is not on the register, I hear they arrest that person and take that person away. So I don't know how true this is. I don't know whether the arrest of polling agents is one of the way of making sure that those ones whom you are claiming ferried are brought, and so that they vote on behalf of those other ones whom they know are not going to be to vote, or they are not within the country, or they are not within the constituency. Is true. But we need to dig more and find out how true this is, and also find a way of making sure we stop such things if they truly happen.
Thank you, Abel. So we're going to go in for a short break and we'll be back briefly.
So, Madam MP, I'm so honored to have you on this interview. So, for starters, how does it feel like being an MP? I want you to take me through your scope of work in this office.
So you really want me to take you through my day, how I spend my day?
Sure.
Let me start with office. Actually, I think this is something better. Why don't I hand over my office to you for something like 2 or 3 days?
That will be perfect.
It will be perfect. So when will you be free?
We can do it now.
Now? I'm going to hand over my office to you for 24 hours.
Okay.
Right. This is a list of the calls I'm expecting today. These are the phones. You make sure you note down everything.
Okay. Have a good day.
Have a good day too.
Yes, please, Officer for MP. Yes. Please, I'll call you back. Hello, Officer of the MP. How may I help you? Yes. Which place is that? Oh my God. How much? 14. My God! Is this what she goes through?
Oh, whatever. Thank God you're back. I can't do this anymore. But we agreed for 24 hours. What does that mean? I don't know how you do it. Let me just look back. Have you got enough for your story?
Enough. I got more than what I bargained for. Thank you so much.
Voters redefined the work of an MP. I buy food, I pay for burials, I pay school fees for so many, I pay hospital bills, I buy seeds and donate.
But why? Tell people the bitter truth.
They don't want to know.
Do your job.
Which is?
Make laws, protect the democratic government, oversee the implementation of the government programs.
They don't want to.
When will you ever put service before politics?
Tell voters I'm a politician, not a Rotarian. They should stop that begging culture of theirs.
Stop imposing such overwhelming demands on your MP. The statutory role of an MP is to perform legislation, oversight, budget approval, and representation.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
Welcome back from that short break. And before we went on a break, we were discussing the recent by-elections and their impact on Uganda's democratic dispensation. And today we have Abel Eseru, a political scientist. And Abel, I hope you're back on. So before we broke off, we were talking about the issue of voter hospitality and sharing of voters from neighboring districts. And we also know that these by-elections had a lot of misuse of state resources and a lot of abuse of state resources. It has become a precedent for resources like personnel and vehicles being misused during elections. What do you think what implications does this have on our democratic dispensation, Abel?
True, personally, I can confirm this that we are having a lot of abuse of state resources in terms of personnel, as I told you. We have people like top government officials going to these districts or constituencies to canvass for votes for their candidates, and you find they move with government vehicles. They have personnel that guard them, which are paid for by taxpayers' money. And also, you will ask yourself, you think these vehicles, what do they move with? They need to be fueled, and who fuels them? These people have government fuel cards, so they just go and fuel the vehicles and do whatever the movements, the kind of movements they do. But also, there is an issue of how do these people get fed? How are they accommodated? Where are they getting the money from in terms of the finances? So you realize we are now trying to have the issue of abuse of state resources becoming also permanent in our elections. And this is really so sad, and it's not good for our country's growth democratically, because the abuse of state resources in an election do compromise the integrity of an election. And in most cases, all I know, they reduce the public trust in the legitimacy and the credibility of an electoral process. That's why you find some people nowadays say, this government people have again come, they're now going to do whatever they want in an election, and we know what is going to happen. So they say this government people have come, this government people have come. They not say maybe these NRM leaders have come. So when they say this government people have come, they know they're driving government vehicles, they're moving with security personnel, and they're canvassing for votes for their own candidates. So you find that people lose credibility and public trust in the electoral process because they know it's now government that has come. It's not a political party. So that's why you see, although I was telling you initially the security is partly one of the reasons why people are now disinterested in even engaging in elections, but also the abuse of state resources, because people feel like even if you go and vote, they have the money, they have the security, they have the what? All the state machinery has been put in a constituency. So people just losing trust in the process. So the abuse of state resources is one of the issues that is continuously undermining the integrity of our elections. And we need to have a honest discussion as stakeholders, both from the non-state actors and state actors, to ensure that how do we reduce, or how do we make sure that we do away with this issue of abuse of state resources, because it has continuously undermined how our electoral process is being conducted. It has ensured that the field is not, the playing field is not level, because if you're using state resources and competing against someone who doesn't have access to state resources, how do you expect that person to compete with you? That person will just be not competing with you, but just escorting you, because you have all the state machinery that is uh, helping you move and canvas wherever you want. So we need to have a honest conversation on how can we do away with this issue of abuse of state resources, because it is continuously undermining the credibility of elections, and the public trust in the electoral process is right now very low, because they are saying that wherever you go, they will say this government people have come, not maybe the NRM party secretary has come, or maybe also from the opposition side. Sometimes there are some officials, MPs, and what they also drive. Who funds them? It's government. They have fuel cards from government. So it's two-sided, both the opposition and also the ruling government. The MPs who go there, they use government fuel. They don't use their personal fuel. They are fueled by the government taxpayers' money. So we should not only look at it that it's only from the ruling government, but also from opposition side. These MPs who got those consequences, where do they get the fuel from? So the abuse of state resources.
Yes, thank you, Abel. Also, beyond abuse of state resources, we have seen some government officials, in this instance, the Prime Minister, on several cases. I think the first one was in Kayunga. There were allegations of the Prime Minister herself dishing out money to voters late in the night, and it was the same instance in Soroti City East. But nothing seems to happen. You said one of the opposition leaders was arrested for just 2 million. And yet we have seen videos of the Prime Minister herself giving out money. So why is it that there are some people that are untouchable and yet there are others who are touchable?
Before I respond to that question, personally, I for fact, I don't believe that we should have the Prime Minister, the Vice President, and also the President himself engaging in these small by-elections, because these are just by-elections, they're not general elections. And the party in power already has numbers in parliament, even if they lose all these by-elections. Of course, I know it's political capital to go and canvass for votes and try to share, and also again familiarize with the voters, get to them and they see you. But if we have almost all the top leadership of government going to a constituency to campaign for votes. Of course, I can't rule out the allegation made by people that maybe the prime minister dished out money. I cannot confirm, but it may be possible because you're going to a constituency as a prime minister, and we know as a prime minister you have some money with you. As a president, you have some money with you. As the vice president, you also have some money with you. So whether this money is being used to bribe voters or other things, I can't confirm. But the issue of using money in our elections is a problem, a very big problem, and we need to see how can we limit this, and how can we also ensure that these leaders who are already in government, what role should they be playing in active campaign processes? Should they be involving themselves in by-elections when we have other pressing national issues? I don't think we need to have all of them camp in a small constituency which has less than okay, the highest so far we have was Buchimbiri, I mean Abu Songora South, which had over 50,000 voters. But we Ugandans, we are over 45 million. So if you're going to come as the top leadership, almost all of you camping in a small constituency that has only 5,000 voters, I mean 50,000 voters, why are we leaving the others? The other Ugandans, they have pressing issues. Why always going to attend to all those Ugandans? So I think we need to refocus and think on how can we move forward. Our leaders should not concentrate on all of them camping in small constituencies. They should keep on their focus all on national issues that are pressing. For example, we have had issues in Bugisu, which are the floods. We have issues of hunger in Karamoja. Let's put our efforts there, not on small constituencies, which you can easily win when you go and campaign without even using state resources, and whether using money or what, just carry on your ideology. You see, when you're a dominant party and people believe in you, you have already the infrastructure. Use the party secretariat and those other structures you've built, and also these personnel from opposition, the candidates and those campaign for opposition members. Why should the MPs use our vehicles to buy for them to go and canvass for votes? Why should they use our fuel to accommodate them to move to those constituencies, and also our allowances we pay them to go? So they should not blame only government. That's only government that is using state resources, but even the MPs in opposition and those some of the leaders in opposition are using our government fuel because we have voted for them using taxpayers' money. So they are crying foul, but they are also the reason why we are still abusing state resources for partisan politics.
All right, thank you, Abel, for your submission. It's good to have you back. I hope your internet is stable now. Can you hear me, Eddie?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I have a very unstable internet. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So for the past 40 minutes,
Yes,
we've been
I
looking
can hear you.
at some of the, okay. We've been looking at some of the electoral integrity deficits that we have seen so far in the by-elections, and Abel shared quite a number. But from your point of view, Eddie, what stood out the most in terms of these deficits? What's that one big integrity deficit that you can't get past that you've seen in the by-elections? Yes, Eddie, can you hear me?
Thank you, Lisa. In my opinion, if I'm allowed to be genuine, I really do not think.
Well, we seem to have lost Eddie again.
No, I'm there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying that we do not seem to continue wasting taxpayers' money to hold elections in Uganda's electoral context or governance context, because we have continuously come to believe that elections is a waste of time. And I have always shared my sentiments that in Uganda we have selections vis-a-vis a situation where we're supposed to have elections, because by the time we go to elections, probably the winner of that election is known. Look at what happened in Gogonyo, in Soroti, and in in Busongora yesterday, almost the winner was known before the election was done. So I really don't think we still have to. We better use that money to go for to put up schools, to put up health centers, to make roads. I was looking at the roads in Busongora. They were so badly off. So we cannot be talking about integrity deficits in this. We should be talking about whether we should have elections or not elections in the current democratic context. For me, that's my opinion. And if you look at in history has it that in Uganda, it is extremely difficult to win a by-election. Remember that in a general election, we have the state machinery spread over the country. But in a by-election, we have state machinery pointing at only one constituency. The army, the police, the electoral commission, the security agencies, everybody that you can think of that has capacity to influence elections is in that constituency. All the money, remember that given what we had in the general elections previously, the current NRM regime is trying to salvage its face and make sure that we win whichever election and in whichever way. Look at what happened in Kayunga. If you recall, results were turned upside down. You know, for me, we cannot talk about integrity deficits. We should be talking about whether we should have elections or not elections. If you compare with what happened in Kenya, you can imagine they are trying to have a dispute over whether the 14,000 electoral votes should be added or should not be added. But here in Uganda, we're talking about whether we should lose millions or add millions to an electoral poll for a candidate to win. You know, those are totally different contexts, and we seem to be digressing from democracy principles, and I cannot see any deficit you're talking about. I can only advise ourselves to rethink whether we should have elections or not elections. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Eddie, for that interesting thought. I don't know whether Abel agrees with the notion of not having elections at all. And Abel, I wanted to ask you something about Gogonyo, Palisa. I think we saw the opposition candidate give up at the last minute. And this is just after the opposition leaders had come up to create a front where they agreed that for the remaining by-elections, they would front one candidate. What does this say about, what does the pulling out of the opposition candidate in Gogonyo say about the opposition and their arrangement?
First of all, we need to understand that politics has become a business. So me as a candidate, I can decide to go and tell them that I want to stand for you as a political candidate, but when my ambitions and aspirations are very different from what the political parties or opposition stand for, because maybe I might be positioning myself there to just be bought off, get the money, which I want maybe to start off with my lifestyle and other things, and I proceed with my life. So I want to tell you that nowadays some of the candidates have realized that since the ruling government is good at fetching some of them, so they position themselves so that they can only, so long as someone gets a flag for any opposition political party, that's enough for either them to sell themselves off, opposition themselves to be bought off. So once they have agreed to be bought off, in terms of maybe they agree on how much money they want or what kind of maybe government position they should be given in any ministry or anywhere else, they tend to say, okay, for me now, I am not going to stand because I've consulted ABCD, I've consulted maybe with my family, maybe with my cultural leaders, maybe with my voters, so I've decided not to stand, I'm going to withdraw from the race. For me, that doesn't rhyme in my head even for a single second, because first of all, before you come and stand as a candidate, before you even show interest, the first thing you do is to consult before you're nominated. Consult from your family, consult from your friends, consult from the cultural leaders you think who have to endorse you, and also before you go to any political party, because it's through consultation that's when they will guide you that which party do you think I can win from if I go to this political party. So when you get a political party flag and then you tell us that now you go and consult, so you did not consult before even going to look for a political party. So for me, that doesn't rhyme in my head. That was just a mockery. Some of these candidates are just using political parties as umbrellas or special purpose vehicles to achieve whatever means they are up to. Because you cannot tell me you did not consult. So that candidate of Gogonyo withdrew and decided to fake the opposition political parties or the alliance of the political parties had its own intentions, because there's no way you can tell me in any democracy whereby you go as a candidate, like today me I want to go and contest, and then I say let me go to this political party, get the flag, then I go and consult from my family members, from my voters, from my over cultural leaders, because I have first to weigh the ground. Which political party is strong? If this political party is strong, can I be able to get this flag? If yes, I go for it. If no, which one is plan B? So I have first way from the voters and also the opinion leaders, the what on ground. So by the time I get that, that's when I will now say, okay, let me now one contest. But we have candidates who have mastered the art of making sure that they position themselves to get the party flags and sell themselves off, or accept to be bought off, or they make sure that they use those party flags to look for jobs within government.
Yes, Abel, just a quick one. Did this arrangement between the opposition parties come into play in Busongora and Bukimbiri? Did the arrangement actually work?
Of course, in Buchimbiri, the arrangement was there. The initial candidate who was about not more than 20 years. He was a youth. So he was nominated as the new flag bearer, but because of the arrangement opposition now has of making sure that if they have a strong candidate, if one candidate is stronger than the other, and maybe they feel that if they compete together they cannot win, then they front one candidate to run. So they left. The candidate was called Owebebe something. I'm forgetting his other name. Who contested in Buchimbiri. But I was again very shocked. The candidate only got 208 votes. So I was asking myself, was this alliance really working in Buchimbiri, or it was just a hoax in that side of Buchimbiri? And in an area, I expected them to unite and front one candidate, and so that they can be able to really give the ruling government good competition. Of course, competition in quotes, because there are other things that make our elections not to look like you're competing for positions in power. You find that they had all strong candidates, because the incumbent was an NRM candidate, but the incumbent replaced was an MP in 2016, who was in FDC, was defeated during the FDC primaries and contested in 2021 as an independent. And then the FDC guy, who was also there, was also a bit strong. So I expected these parties to unite and say, okay, since we have a front and we have decided to agree that let's work together in all our elections, let's look for who is the best suitable candidate and front that candidate. But of course, all these political parties have that element that we are strong, I'm strong, and strong. And sometimes when they weigh the ground and feel like almost all their candidates are strong in terms of numbers of voters they can garner in that election, they tend to forget that they came into an agreement of having fronting one candidate in that election, working together. Because if you look at the election, the votes that they got from yesterday's election in Buchim, I don't have them here, but you find that if this candidate got about 5,000 something votes, the NUP candidate got about 6,000 and something votes. The NRM candidate who won had about 12,000 votes. So you imagine if they had come together as one force and worked together as one force. You never know, they would have garnered together these votes and also maybe gotten some more votes from within the NRM candidate. So the division that they went through again, because of instead of working together and then they decided to split because they thought they could win NRM, because NRM is very strategic. Once opposition is divided, that is where they will always beat you hands down. But when you come together, that's when you give them sleepless nights. So you find that this opposition have also not mastered that art of. They just speak sometimes on camera, and then when it comes to real action, practicing what they have said, they tend to diverge.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
I don't know
Abel.
if things are real or not.
Thank you so much, Abel. I don't know if we still have Eddie online. He seems to have gone off, but we are left with just about 3 minutes. And Abel, conclusively, just picking a leaf from the just concluded Kenya elections that we saw were really peaceful and fair. What lessons should we draw from Kenya as a country as you conclude?
First of all, I would like to say that democracy is not one size fits. Every country has its own way of growing in terms of democratic growth and dispensation. But what I would like to tell people that elections that are recognized as free and fair always ensure that there's peaceful transition of power. That's what we have seen in Kenya. All of them think that elections are free and fair, and that will always usher in a peaceful transition of power. But when you have elections which are looked at as not free, you've battered the people have been killed, people have been arrested, people are not allowed to canvass all over the country to campaign. People are talking of too much money, people are talking of ballot stuffing, all those things, all those electoral integrity deficits. I don't think you will have a candidate who will say, okay, we have competed peacefully and I've been won, so let me allow my opponent to take over power. So there are certain things we need to learn from Kenya. First of all, our candidates themselves, our political candidates who engage in this, who compete in these electoral processes, they need to ensure that whenever they are campaigning, they focus on their manifestos and ideas. That's what they should sell to the people, not the thing of over dictator, over this one is a ganja smoker, over this one doesn't have what. So that kind of political intolerance and mudslinging won't help us grow anywhere. So we need to focus on issue-based politics. If we are going to campaign, what are the issues you're going to address? Tell us 1, 2, 3. You've told us your issues. Let another also come and tell us 1, 2, 3. Not you coming and then the entire campaign rally is on personality of someone. When you say this guy is like this, that wasn't in, that was one of the most outstanding thing I learned from Kenya, and I want our leaders to also appreciate and learn that politics should be issue based, not about character assassinating the other personality. And then also there's the issue of we saw in Kenya, and I want to applaud them again. They had a lot of election observers who were there at play. They observed the elections peacefully. They were not arrested. They were not deported. They were not harassed. They did not refuse to give them accreditation, or they did not attack any of their centers where they were doing their work, like it happened there in 2021. We saw the umbrella group that was formed, that is NEW, National Election Watch Uganda. Where did it end? It was disbanded. So it means like it was showing you like they did not want citizens to observe their own elections, which is a constitutional right. So sometimes I find it very awkward in terms of the way we act as a country, and when you compare to our neighbors. Kenya accredited observers, they observe very well. You find no case of where someone was arrested, but also in terms of how security behaved in the Kenyan elections compared to the Ugandan elections. Did you find any security agency or security official stopping Raila Odinga that don't go to this county? Or stopping Ruto that don't go to this county? You're only supposed to be in this county. Why are you crossing to this county? Compare it with what happened in Uganda. You are stopped. They are telling you not going to, even by the RDC himself, who does not participate in coming up with the electoral calendar. Even if they participate, but they should respect the electoral calendar, because if the electoral commission has gazetted that this is the roadmap, this is where someone is supposed to have his campaigns from, allow the person to go there. Don't start that you're not supposed to use this route. Use this route. You're not supposed. What is that? What you're supposed to do as security agents is to just make sure you protect the candidate, let the candidate reach the venue where he or she's supposed to campaign from, and after campaigns, they live peacefully, and you protect them and also protect the businesses around. That's what you, as police, supposed to do in Uganda. But what we see here is very different. We find that they block the way and they tell you not going to cross this side. You go and use the other route. So what if you protect the people who are coming with him and tell them, okay, we are going to protect you, make sure you pass here and you go. So the way security conducts itself in our elections should also change, because what we saw from Kenya can be a good lesson for us, but also as voters. As voters in Uganda, and if you compare our voters and those of Kenya, sometimes become tolerant. Intolerant, because you find they start abusing themselves, they start fighting, they are drinking, they are doing all sorts of things which are anti-democratic. And through such things, they provoke themselves, they start fighting, they want to throw stones at each other, whether it's the president, whether it's who. So all those things don't help our democracy, because now, instead of you now uniting and say, let's first put our country first beyond any other thing, you will now start having ethnic kind of politics. Now these ones are from this region, this one is like this. So the politics of personality comes in, ethnicity comes in. So it can never allow you have a peaceful transition of power, because now you will have a clique of people who feel like they are not being they are being sidelined because maybe they are from this region. A certain political party may also feel like, okay, we are also not we are being sidelined because of A, B, C, D. But let's ask ourselves: how do we conduct ourselves as leaders? Do we campaign based on issues, or we campaign based on character assassination?
All right, thank you, Abel. Yes.
Do our electorates also conduct themselves peacefully? Do the security members conduct themselves peacefully? And lastly, before I conclude, even our electoral management body, it needs to be supported. Because if you look at how IEBC of Kenya conducted the entire poll from the campaign period to the last day, you will really see that the country planned for it very well, systematically. Everything moved as planned. But in Uganda here, you'll find the electoral commission going to beg government, we want money to hold elections, they tell you there's no money. We want money maybe to buy this, there's no money. So you roll out the roadmap, but there's no money for you to implement that roadmap. So some of the activities that you're supposed to put in place, you skip them. So how do you skip something you planned for? That already causes something which are not, makes electoral elections not to be conducted in a free and fair manner. Because if you're supposed to conduct maybe voter education and there's no money for voter education, and maybe you wait 3 months for election, then that's when you start conducting voter education. How many people do you think will have learned whatever you're trying to do? Very few. So people will not know what to do. They will go there and start sticking things anyhow. That's where you find that this is invalid vote, because you've not given electoral commission ample time. But once you have given electoral commission ample time, you have given them the resources they need in terms of financial, you've trained their personnel, we can be able to conduct elections which are also like for Kenya. But this thing of security is overtaking over the elections. We saw in 2021 the exchanges between the IGP and the chairperson of the electoral commission, when the security officers had now they had started stopping most of the campaigns for these opposition leaders. Electoral commission wrote to them telling them to stop. And then they said, give us evidence of those ones we stopped without maybe them causing chaos or what. So you ask yourself, who is in charge of the elections? Is it electoral commission or police? So we need to address those things and learn from Kenya. There are very many things we can learn from Kenya, but because of the time, I think for For now, I can stop here, but I want to say elections should be a contestation of ideas, not money, not violence, not character assassination. Let's front our ideas. Let's respect the principles of democracy. Let's ensure that we respect all ourselves as political candidates, as political parties, and also let's give our EMP the respect they deserve, because these guys are frustrated. You discuss with some of them, they tell you we are very frustrated because you think you're trying your best, but you see some invisible hands coming to disrupt and disorganize the entire process. Because now you agree with the security that let's do A, B, C, D, but you find they've arrested polling agents. So who is going to sign on the BR forms? Who is going to make sure that they keep that everything moves on smoothly? But also candidates, why should you kick election materials? You know what the law says. If there's anything and you have evidence, wait, that can be a good ground for you to go to court and that election is annulled. But of course, annulling election each and every time will cost taxpayers a lot of money.
Yes,
So
I'm going to have to cut you short. Thank you so much. It's been an interesting conversation. And Ed, even though we had you briefly, it was good to have you on the show. Thank you, all our viewers that tuned in today here at Acfim. We're very grateful, and we hope to see you next week, the same place and same time. Remember to stay safe, and God bless you all.